Hello everyone and welcome to round number 5 of our 2v2 August tournament. This time we are going to be featuring once again Blues and Death Tacticus, and they are up against Polina and Polished Naxi. Polina Polished Naxi sitting on 2 points, Blues and DT sitting on 4. So if Polina and Naxi can manage to claim this one, they do have a shot still at potentially winning this tournament. However, if Blues and DT come through, that means they will have 5, and at most any of their opponents can have 3. So with 1 round remaining, winning this match would go ahead and secure them the tournament. Everybody else would be stuck fighting for 2nd place. Blues and DT both getting on the board quickly, it looks like. Not too fast. Players were pretty confident in waiting this time, but they both get on well before that 0 cash amount, whereas Polina and Polished Naxi, they're not really sure what to do from here, it seems. And you gotta say, resources aren't looking all that great across this map. Perhaps they're just waiting for a lot of cash to be able to come in while they consider what's going on. Certainly would seem to be an option. Just go ahead and gather up quite a bit of cash if you think that you're not going to be doing well. I'll have to talk to Soren about this, actually. It's something I'll have to mention after the game. I'm not going to talk about it too much right now because I'd rather our players didn't abuse it too much, but something to consider. So, everybody's on the board. You can see Naxi and Polina, despite getting on the board late, they are able to upgrade quite easily. So we've just got HQ2s to HQ1s. Now, worth pointing out that it was Polina who took the upgrade for our Polina Naxi team, whereas DT took the upgrade for him and Blues. And I really like this better for DT and Blues, getting that expansive player up to HQ2 quickly, having the expansive player be the steel producer, and getting them up to HQ2 quickly. I like that better, as of course that player will receive additional claims over the other. In addition to that, it does look like Naxi was our last player to found, so they were going to be the player that got the extra claim at HQ2. Polina's extra claim is coming at HQ3, so I think it might have been a bit better for Naxi to have taken, that HQ2 upgrade and be positioned near the iron. Just something to consider. That I really do like that. It's a small thing, but small things can really grow over time. Over the course of an Offworld Trading Company match, of course. And so it's important to note, regardless. Just those little edges are perhaps why Blues and DT have been so dominant thus far this game.
A robotics HQ has been upgraded.
Alright, and you can see that it looks like Blues and DT are being rewarded. Now that we're pushing to higher HQ levels, of course, the gaps between the cost of upgrading a robot and upgrading an expansive player are getting greater, so perhaps it makes more sense to upgrade the robot first now. But you can see that Blues and DT is still pretty solidly ahead when it comes to upgrades at this point. Meanwhile, this office has really created a bit of an interesting power situation, all these offices at the colony.
New claim is available for option.
So we do see quite a few solar panels out of Blues. Wouldn't be too surprised to see another at some point from him as well. Just to make sure that you've got plenty of power going. Oh, and a slowdown strike did occur over on some of DT's steel. This is why we see our players typically in the habit of splitting up their steel mills. It's something we haven't talked about too much, but when you have this much steel production, you don't want to set yourself up in a position where a power surge or a slowdown strike can hit all of it, especially because the adjacency bonuses have diminishing returns. So you typically will see maybe just a pair of triangles or a 2-and-2 split or this 2-3 split that you see out of DT, far more common at higher level play in particular than just a solid block of 5 steel mills in something like this 2v2 scenario. All right, it does look like we're going to have a little steel production coming down from Noxie, because what happened here was Polina went ahead and moved into power, since power was getting quite expensive, but was forced to sacrifice a fair amount of steel production in order to do that. So in order to make sure that everybody had enough steel production, Noxie goes ahead and moves into the steel themselves. Now, this is fine because of what we were talking about earlier. You're not really sacrificing adjacency bonuses too much, as Polina was kind of keeping that steel separated anyway. It is a small adjacency sacrifice when you consider the bonuses that the robotic player gets from the iron mines, but not too much of a concern. Certainly worthwhile, I think, to go ahead and get that power online and separate your steel mills between your players. DT moving up to 3. This feels like a bit of a slower moving game than a lot of the others that we've seen so far. But our players are gradually getting there. Underground nuke comes down on some of DT's water. I like that. Water's looking a bit difficult for DT, and so perhaps you get to... Or no, excuse me, that was from DT onto Noxie's water. Regardless, I like it because water's looking a bit limited on the map, like most of our resources. And so if Noxie was the one that wanted to take water, that's not going to work out as well anymore, just without access to that high water tile that was previously available. This keeps things easier for Blues and DT, just to keep control of more markets. And if you can control those life support markets in particular, even with a couple of robots this game, that can often be very, very valuable. All right, a little bit of power coming out of Noxie as well. I don't really like this move in particular. I really do not prefer to see players be splitting up power. I think it should mostly be focused in one location. That said, if that's what you're going to do, it really would have needed to be Polina who takes the upgrade to 3 rather than Noxie. And I think that might have been the right decision if Noxie and Polina had thought all the way through about what buildings they were going to be getting down with their HQ level 4 upgrade. You can see Blues is also very heavily committed to power. Slowdown strike here should be looking very, very tempting for Polina and Noxie. Slowdown strikes, of course, penetrate these goon squads. And so perhaps a bit of a mistake there, the fact that these black market cooldowns are available. I talked about this in an earlier game today. Almost always a mistake to be letting these cooldowns running in this middle stage of the game. You can see these players have plenty of cash available. There is a very, very strong target to be attacking with Blues and his power production. Only reason he has debt right now is, of course, because of the nighttime debt that he receives, and he's able to pay through that very, very quickly if his power is left undisturbed. You can see a bonus of 5 power per second, and now he's just making money from it once again. That said, I've been talking about Blues and all his money this whole time. Noxie and Polina have managed to get very, very aggressive, and Blues, rather than helping his friend survive, chooses to get aggressive against Polina instead. And so suddenly, DT and Blues may be just not quite playing it safe enough. They go up to 2 4s, and that's just not enough. Polina and Noxie, they say, okay, we don't need 2 4s. You've managed to accumulate a large amount of debt, and you've gotten aggressive. You're getting aggressive against us instead of defending yourself. We're just going to take you down. We're going to take down, in particular, that weak player who's been spending so much power. You can see that DT was very heavily committed into steel and electrolysis, and so this is the downside. This is the downside of having your expansive player be the one who's like not producing power, be the one who's producing steel. The expansive player is already developing a very, very large amount of debt. And so having all that power cost from the steel added to that, never paying through any of it, with power production starting with a large amount of debt, this can leave you very, very vulnerable to one of these sudden plays. And so now, all of a sudden, we're in a position where Blues, he has to get to this majority buy very, very quickly. Noxie, I'm concerned Noxie has gotten too aggressive here. I don't think there was literally any reason to press that button to upgrade to HQ 5. Should have been kept on 4. Once you're in a position where you've forced kind of this 2 with a subsidiary on 1 scenario, All you want to do
Available for option.
is drag that game out. That is all that matters at that point, because you have effectively won if you can drag the game out. As time goes on, you have the advantage. You have so many more claims. You have the subsidiary. There is no reason to potentially sacrifice that massive advantage. You can see that Polina and Noxie, they don't have the cash, and still Blues pulling in money from this power in particular. If this power price can hold on long enough, then it looks like Blues is going to manage to drag himself back into this game. Ridiculous.
A robotics
All
HQ has been
Noxie and
upgraded.
Polina should have done in order to finish that up is stay completely persistent with their own black market the entire time. Blues would have never had that amount of cash if they had been consistent with the black market through the mid game. They likely would have had enough cash to finish off Death Tacticus. It wasn't even close, that defense. Death Tacticus just didn't, it wasn't anywhere near the cash he needed to stay in this game. And then just not hit HQ5. Just buy your own stock. And make sure you've got the cash to buy that stock as long as your opponent is holding that cash, because all you got to do is drag that game out. Well, once again, we've got a bit of a different game on our hands this time, one-on-one, but man, you gotta look that Blues has the massive advantage. Blues already HQ5, has 9 stocks secured in the subsidiaries that we're looking at. Polina only has 3. This is the downside, potentially, to having split up that subsidiary in the way that they did. Was suddenly it left it very, very easy for Blues to kind of make sure that he could pick up at least a little bit of it. If that subsidiary had been wholly in one player or the other, perhaps they could have been more committed to defending just that player, so that you don't take the upgrade, you just defend the subsidiary secured player, and then you've made sure that no matter what happens, you are going to be okay moving forward. Blues, once again, we see the patent lab out of him. Typically, it's been thinking machines. He has continued to move through those, though. Thinking machines, slant drilling, and superconductor for Blues this game. He is also going to head toward carbon scrubbing, which is just a nice way to make sure that he doesn't have to commit any of his admittedly limited number of claims toward carbon, and he can ensure that he'll have that electronics production and that chem production late into the game. On-road prices not looking too great right now, and with both subsidiaries already at HQ level 5 and continuing to produce those resources, I would expect a priority to shift into off-world markets pretty soon. In fact, that may be partially why Blues is committing so heavily to this tile auction. That was a natural tile auction there, a very fortunate one for Blues in a lot of ways. He's going to move into an optimization center right now. One optimization center I find understandable. You can start optimizing fuel, guarantee off-world launches quite easily. With that, you can maybe optimize some electronics production as well. But I do want to see these off-world markets start to come down pretty soon. Blues has the electronics he needs. You can see he's going to go ahead and just sit on the 100. And now he's just going to be looking to pull in some glass and some steel, it looks like, to go ahead and make sure he can get that done. Meanwhile, over on the Polina side of things, not a whole lot going on, it would appear. Polina can upgrade, perhaps a bit nervous about it, as Polina does remember what happened to Noxie after that upgrade. You can see Blues sitting on a very large amount of cash, so Polina is going to be very nervous about committing this money and investing it anywhere. Does have quite a number of electronics saved up herself, I believe, but things still not looking too good. Also has bought that glass, so it is definitely an off-world market that we're looking for out of Polina. Even has the hologram secured to try and make the transition. And we are going to see a transition right now on into food. And along with that transition, the off-world market is begun. So, Blues likely paying enough attention to kind of spot the delays there in actually putting down the market. It's usually a good idea to go ahead and try and do that as fast as you can, just to make it look quite natural, the growth there. So if Blues was watching, he'll be suspicious, especially knowing that some holograms have been purchased this game. And you can see the network virus has in fact already landed, even landed straight on that tile, just in case it was gooned, rather than landing here and effectively guaranteeing that all of these tiles would be covered by the virus. The virus hits here, and it guarantees to break any hologram in this area by planting it here. That's almost like saying, I know this is the off-world spot, and you might have a goon squad there, so I want to tear through it just in case. Oh man, cold fusion auction. Nobody really cares. Power's not that expensive. And Blues, he's got his off-world market constructed, starting to launch that fuel, upgrading electronics off the optimization center. He feels pretty secure in his position, so he's just going to be buying into Polina. And the mutiny comes down. That should be the nail in Polina's coffin. Polina can take it back, of course, but mutinies are very, very expensive right now. Blues has the cash to spare, where Polina really does not. And so Blues looking to clean this up quickly. Don't know if he's even going to get off this launch. Certainly needs to cancel the additional fuel launch, I believe. Go ahead, bring that cash back home. Give him just enough to go ahead and clean up this game very, very easily. Doesn't really matter though. Blues does go ahead and get to the buy. Nice recovery there from Blues. Good of him to identify, and this is the kind of player that Blues is realistically. Fights tooth and nail to win most of the time. Really doesn't like to lose. It's really easy to just give up after your friend gets majority bought out and you don't have anything going in your favor, really, when it comes to that majority buy. But if you stay in the game, you give your opponent the opportunity to make a mistake. And your opponent's mistakes are certainly the easiest way to win a game of Offworld Trading Company. A lot easier than trying to make sure that you are just managing everything exactly correctly yourself. And so Blues, he stays in it. He comes through and he cleans it up pretty quickly with a Soul 6 victory for his team. And also, that is going to give Blues and Death Tacticus guaranteed the tournament win. They are now 5 points up. Even if Gameslayer and PB win their game, which it does look like they did, that leaves Gameslayer and PB at 3 with only 1 point left on the board. It is not going to be enough for Gameslayer and PB to pull it back. But we can still see how second place pans out potentially. So let's go ahead and head that way.